Okay, welcome everybody. My name is John Katsir. I write for Forbes and consult with tech companies, and I'm your MC for the day. Our next session is a joint presentation. The title is Digital Reputations Are Everything. Our two speakers are Samir Somal, co-founder and CEO of Blue Ocean Global Tech, and Laura Powers, Director of Development and Communications for the Philadelphia Bar Foundation. Samir, Laura, have a great session.
Thank you, John. Welcome, everybody. We have a lot to cover today, so we'll just jump right into it. But if you want to learn more about us or connect with us, you can find us on all the social media platforms and reach out to us there. We're always happy to talk. So today we're talking about reputation. Reputation started out as a public relations term, but with the growth of the internet and social media, it is now online reputation that is most important. Many of us want to preserve and promote a positive reputation, whether we're an individual or a business or selling a product or a service. We have kind of three goals: to be trustworthy, to be likable or kind, and to deliver the results that we say that our product or ourselves are going to deliver. Samir, would you agree with, in general, that reputation definition?
Absolutely. I think reputation's more so than what we have in person with people. It's what we are online that's dictating our opportunity set. And the two ultimately go hand in hand. And so reputations are everything. And now our digital reputation is forever part of that equation.
So we're going to cover a few things today, including how to build, how to monitor, and how to repair your online reputation management. Your online reputation, which is sometimes referred to as ORM. We have a couple of interesting polls that we hope you'll participate in. The first one is coming up, and then feel free to post any Q&As or questions in the Q&A box, and we'll answer them as we go along. So the first poll is: how many of you have a formal process for measuring reputation? So you either have a formal process or no formal process, or you don't really know how to measure reputation. What does that mean even? Or not really sure. So the poll results are mostly that about half and half. Company doesn't have a formal process, or I'm not sure how to measure, or I don't know if our company has a formal process or not. Mm-hmm. So that's usually, unless you're in charge of kind of the brand or the ORM for a company, you may not even realize what the company communications department is doing. Or if you are in charge of all the reputation for your product or service, you would want to start doing that. There are many varieties and different levels depending on who you are, what you're marketing, and what you're kind of building and monitoring that would influence what type of management you did. Right, Samir?
Yeah, I would just expound upon that and say that, just the very notion of reputation by its definition is somewhat nebulous and intangible. How do you, of course, measure sales and expenses and profitability? Those are kind of set quantitative metrics, but qualitatively, how do you measure trust? How do you measure relationships? How do you measure leadership? These are all things that play into reputation. And so it's oftentimes why, as marketers or as entrepreneurs or as executives, we struggle with this notion of digital reputation, digital marketing, because there are so many intangibles associated with it. So by very definition, it's not easy to answer that poll question.
Yeah, that's true. And so what is a robust online reputation? What does that look like?
Well, I always first and foremost say, Laura, that your online reputation, a good one, is where you're able to reflect who you are in real life, the trust, goodwill, relationship capital that you have with your friends, clients, strategic partners, even with your team members. How is that reflected online? So a positive reputation would probably entail making sure that articles featuring you are coming up on the first Google search results. You have solid and I would say favorable and positive reviews, and You perhaps when you click on that video link or some of the way Google populates, you have videos that represent who you are. And I think it's just important to recognize whether you're talking about an individual or a company, what somebody wants to be online and how they want to leverage their online reputation is unique. But I think those are some of the considerations. And I oftentimes ask, clients, prospective clients, or when we're speaking together at an event, I oftentimes ask the audience and say, hey, are you excited to tell people to Google your name or to Google your company's name? And that probably indicates whether or not you have what you want on there.
Yeah. So to dovetail on that, when a crisis hits with your online reputation, something happens, which we'll talk about later, all the kinds of scenarios that might occur to damage a positive ORM. When you're being found and you've got a robust profile, if something like that happens and throws a wrench into your great robust ORM, is it easier to recover when you have all these things working for you and you've done proactive work? Or does it depend on what happens with your reputation? Is it harder to recover?
I think it's a question we oftentimes pose to folks, is that it would make sense that if you have positive digital assets and you have a favorable reputation, when there's some negative mixed in, and it is frustrating because Google actually, their algorithm is built to have a balanced portrayal of your reputation. So, even if there's 50 positive digital assets out there, but there's something that's negative, or even if it's erroneous, Google wants to show a balanced portrayal. So having positive digital assets out there make it much easier. Of course, the domain authority is linked to kind of the length that something's been out there, and of course, a multitude of other factors. But definitely being proactive about building a digital presence not only has tangible benefits to making sure that who you are and that process of building trust is supported, but it certainly plays a huge role in mitigating reputational risk that can come from anywhere.
And so to your point, we're talking about a couple of different ways of managing reputation, because we've got brand reputation management, we've got the products or the services, or the products and or services that a brand puts onto the marketplace. We've got individuals, your own professional reputation to manage, because you never know when career change happens, and especially in the climate that we're in today with everything happening. And then you've got the other individuals working for a brand and collectively making up kind of the composition of a brand, say in a company like a law firm, where every kind of independent lawyer is representing that firm's brand as they're going out and doing new business development. So what do we know about how much consumers value how much they value a rating, a review, a star rating, what they're finding on the first page of Google when they search up the term that they're looking for? Is this something are people really paying attention to this?
Yeah, I think the easiest question is to ask yourself if you are thinking about going to a restaurant now post and kind of COVID pandemic, that we think about that a little bit differently. But I know traditionally when I'm thinking about going to a restaurant, I'm definitely Googling to see what the ratings are on Yelp, what they are on Google. And, today we have unfiltered access to information from a device if it's in the palm of our hands. So it's so easy to check that. And if, our clients and, folks that we've collaborated with include businesses across industries, but, just even something as simple as using one of our law firms. When I was delivering a program, I was talking a little bit about, hey, traditionally you receive clients through referrals, and kind of everyone agrees we don't need our digital presence, Samir, because we receive, referrals. And now your best client receives a recommendation at a cocktail party, and they're saying, hey, you know what? I'm really happy with my attorneys and law firm, and they've really been able to cover some ground for my business. The first thing somebody's doing, they're not picking up the phone. They're definitely Googling, and so that positive reputation plays a role. And I probably didn't even know how important it was, Laura, until people started saying, Samir, you guys have 40, 50 5-star reviews, and that really lends itself to earning trust. And over the last 5 years, as that's grown, people constantly mention that. So I've certainly, not only the statistics support it, but I've seen, in real life with our business and other clients that really does matter.
Yeah. So the star rating immediately builds trust. The content of that rating, so the review that they're giving you within that rating, immediately builds credibility and kind of likability. And then, doing the work is proving the result that you're getting. But those results can also be proved in somebody's rating of the quality they received from the services that you delivered. So I think it's important that, understanding the value that people put on this. And we all know anecdotally, like your story about visiting a restaurant, we all know anecdotally that even if we get a word of mouth referral for something, we immediately go online to verify that for our own selves, our own edification, to make sure that it's something that we align. But the trust is already there with word of mouth. We're starting at a higher level than we would if we were just finding it on our own.
Yeah, and that goes back to the earlier slide, Laura, about building a positive presence. We've seen many situations where someone didn't kind of proactive. They got thousands of happy clients, but they haven't worked to make sure some of those are represented on their Google profile. And there could be someone who's disgruntled or somebody, even a competitor, and all of a sudden when they have 2 or 3 negative reviews, they're looking like a business that shouldn't be in business, as opposed to one that is really doing a good job. So
yeah. So let's talk about investing in resources, budget and human capital into online reputation management. Once you realize that this is something important that you need to be monitoring and watching, let alone building and then repairing, God forbid if you have an issue, it's really important to not take it as something that you don't include in the budget for annual marketing, annual public relations. It's really important to allocate resources to ORM, depending on the situation, whether you've got a product on the market, whether you're trying to build a new brand, whether you're doing it for yourself. That would be the investment of time. But we need to realize that we have to start paying attention to this, and we have to start investing in it. And so some of those strategies, you want to talk about those?
Yeah, I think just bigger picture, I think aligning your sales, marketing, and technology resource allocations to include the conversation around reputation is foundational. So, let's just take a step back. I do a lot of work in terms of digital transformation, and I think that representing yourself online is a big component of that. And when you think about digital transformation, in many ways, it is business transformation. It's how your organization, not only outwardly, but also inwardly, from an operations standpoint, from a structural standpoint, is thinking about new technology and is representing yourself on the internet. So I know firsthand that when you're thinking about, hey, online reputation, it's, you've got a marketing team. The marketing team for the last, foreseeable last several decades has worked on traditional marketing. Where and how can you think about whether it's adding people, supplementing your team, or making sure that you're including the right resources so that the traditional marketing is now in terms of digital marketing, and that digital marketing is reflective online when people are looking to learn more about you. And I think there are a plethora of kind of options for that. Today's kind of a brief presentation, but you can feel free to follow up with us. Laura and I know firsthand that it can be choice overload when you think about building your reputation online. There's so many things to cover, and you need to make sure that you kind of have a process, and it's not something done over here siloed. It's something that is part of your organization, and that's how you can ultimately have that ROI that everybody has to oftentimes report to and measure on in terms of being able to show some tangible results there.
Yeah, so we'll talk about choosing those digital assets, investing in those digital assets. There is choice overload, and you have to be strategic about it. But before we do that, we'll launch a new poll, a second poll. How many of you regularly Google yourself? So this is, let's take not your brand, but yourself, your name, and not the product that you might be pushing, the service you might be selling. So we get, when we do this poll, we rarely get people that never Google themselves. However, and we infrequently get people that have like set it on their calendar to do regular, regular monitoring of their own name. Now, it looks like most people sometimes are Googling themselves here that are participating in this webinar, but I know that having it on the calendar, making sure that you're monitoring it, especially for your own, we've got to do this, as we mentioned, for everything that we're trying to push onto the market, but we're constantly trying to do that for our own selves, or we should be. And so we should be scheduling this for ourselves, just like we would schedule a resume update or a CV update or a LinkedIn profile review and update. These are things that are really important to watch out for, not only just our name, but also all the other things that we're responsible for or participate in with a team to monitor. So why is Google so important, Samir?
Well, as aptly summarized by Eric Schmidt of Google, identity will be the most valuable commodity for citizens in the future, and it will exist primarily online. I think that's true today. And just going back to that poll and just mentioning it, oftentimes when we're delivering a live keynote or even online, I ask people, how many people have met somebody at a conference or received a follow-up email, and they say, hey, you know what, let me Google them and see what they're all about. And, everyone kind of laughs about it and smiles because they realize that they do it. And I always put my hand up and say, yeah, I do it too. And so the reality is that we do Google other people we meet and we make inferences based upon that. And I can speak firsthand. I think that, I, for one, even just having a website that bears my own name, I really resisted, Laura, for a number of years. And my team at Blue Ocean Global Technology said, Samir, you really need a website bearing your own name. I said, it's so narcissistic. Like, I'm not someone that wants to have a website under my own name. But what I've found is that they were right. And it's been a huge asset in business. For instance, somebody learns that I've co-founded a company called Girl Power Talk through my personal website. And they actually mentioned that, hey, Samir, what really differentiated you and Blue Ocean Global Technology is I got to see some of the ways that you spend your time and some of the things that are important to you. And I realized that while you are a digital reputation expert, there's so much more to who you are and the purpose behind it. And that has been a huge asset. And just going back to the Google test, it is real. I had people mention, wow, Samir, like I've had people that come onto our website and they actually cite for our team and say, hey, really liked your CEO's digital presence when he's Googled. I want something like that. I want to make sure that I'm featured in these different places. And so I try to make sure that we take all the things that we've learned and lessons and apply them to people that we're working with. And the reality is that people are looking you up online. So make sure it's a positive and representative digital presence.
So I'm going to throw you a question about that. Say, I think that's a great idea. I'm going to recommend it for my own CEO, or I'm going to do it for myself. What is the minimum time and kind of page scope and website scope that I can invest in to build that would get me somewhere? So I got to buy a URL. I've got to, build out some pages. What's like the minimum amount of work I can do to actually be effective with a mini site about me?
Well, I think making sure that you have active social media profiles, because those are high domain authority assets. I do think the personal asset is going to be important in terms of your website. Having said that, there are kind of a lot of factors that go into building a website and whether it's going to rank. So it's what John D. Rockefeller said a long time ago. He said the next best thing to doing the right thing is telling people that you're doing the right thing. So that definitely comes down to an asset bearing your name. It also is, Laura, being featured. And like some of the articles we've authored together, I've had people say, hey, Samir, I saw that article you authored with Laura about suppression of negative content and how you can remove things. That was really helpful when I Googled your name. And so I think you need to showcase your expertise and be thoughtful about that. The reminder that I tell people is that you don't need to do it all at once. You don't need to feel like you have to be out there for the first, 6 pages of Google. As we see here, the stats show that some say 94% Some have shown a little bit less. The reality is that most people spend the majority of their time on the first page of Google. So if you have the first 20 slots covered, where they're positive or they're neutral, again, it depends upon the name of someone. Of course, a name like Samir is pretty unique, and so it's likely going to have something to do with me. Whereas Laura Powers, and we've had this conversation, there are a couple Laura Powers, and there's even people in fictional TV shows, Laura Powers. So we need to make sure that you're just thoughtful about that and making sure it's representative. So there's no easy answer there, but being proactive is important.
Yeah. So building all those assets, the social media, the unique domain, any articles or guest articles you can participate in, all those types of assets, even just when we're talking about our own, search engine result pages, are so important. And so we want to, that's part of this, that we want to talk about building great content, relevant content, and high quality content. But then there's the other factor of getting onto the Google search engine result page for a name that you've searched, or a brand that you searched, or a product that you searched. We've got many ways, and Moz.com has great resources on how to kind of optimize and control, to the best of our ability, the Google search engine result page, the things that are actually obtainable and low-hanging fruit, the things that are more kind of more obscure. You might not get there with with your own personal name. You might get there with a product, but we know that the local packs, the Google My Business type thing, where you can actually enter your own photos, your map, and everything like that. Really very helpful and easy to control. What about the difference, Samir, between the search engine result page of a desktop site and the same search the same search that you're doing on a mobile? Different? We're seeing different, right?
Yeah, they're definitely different, and you have to look at both. And I know we're at the Mobile Growth Summit here, and more people are searching on their mobile phones than they are on desktops. But depending upon your demographic and who you're looking to reach, both are important. And I think many people would say, myself included, I do a lot of searches on my phone. I also do a lot of searches on my desktop. And so monitoring both results is certainly important.
Yeah, and we can see that, from these stats on the slide, that it really is critical. So website optimization, we always talk about as one of the most overlooked easy things to do that can really help build heavy links on that first Google search result page for a brand. Why do people overlook it so much?
Well, I think because websites feel like a thing of the past. Like, that was when the internet first came out. The reality and the couple factors that I think are important to mention are that if you're doing Google ads, you're doing Facebook ads, you're developing awesome content, people are being driven back to your website. People are thinking about doing business. Your website is going to be the foundation of your digital presence, and make sure that foundation is a good one. And so something as simple as making sure that it's optimized on Android versus iOS, on a tablet versus a mobile phone. These are easy things that people overlook, but we all have been to that website that isn't functional on a device. We have to kind of squeeze it in, and we oftentimes leave it frustrated. So it is important to check all those things. I also think that, similar to a human body, we see a face. There's also internal organs. The same as with a website. Google is incredibly intelligent. They know when you've updated plugins. They know when you've got H1, H2, H3, H4, H5 tags. And so all these little details on optimizing your website are factor into search more so than ever before. And the easy example is if we said that our MC John is the best writer because he does some awesome content in the world, and we wrote that 10,000 times in black text on a black background, and we Googled who's the best writer in the world, we would have John Koester. So that was the case 20 years ago. Now Google is very smart, and so we need to adapt to that. And many of the practices from before are unique today.
Let's jump over to monitoring, and then we'll finish up with repairing. So there's a lot of tools that we can use for monitoring. Do we have to do this all by ourselves by actually literally typing in a phrase in Google in different parts of the country, or are there tools that make it easy if we're actually investing a budget in these kind of things?
Yeah, there are a number of tools that are for high-level monitoring. I know we subscribe to a bunch of them. I think the easiest one, though, is the free one in Google Alerts. Set a Google Alert on your name, on your company's name, on competitors, on keywords that are important. And this can be not only beneficial, Laura, in proactively identifying when there are reputational risks or situations. I've seen a number of times whereby our team has identified places and people that have actually quoted me and referenced Blue Ocean Global Technology or a sister company, Girl Power Talk, and they've said, hey, guess what? So-and-so featured us, and we had no idea. And without that monitoring, we wouldn't have known. So it's an easy way that you can stay atop of anyone that mentions you.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So I know you always tell me great little anecdotes about how people can easily get roped into having a repair issue, not because they've necessarily done something egregious themselves, but even because somebody they're associated with has done something and they were involved in a peripheral way. This can happen to us at any time, right?
Yeah, an easy example is we have a new client who there was a court case with a very famous athletic brand. And this gentleman in this case was a consultant. And when invoices were getting approved, he was simply CC'd. So when there was a discovery phase in court, they pulled all the different emails and, the reporting that was done even by major sources like ESPN dragged his name, although he was not charged with anything. He essentially had nothing to do with it. He was one of a number of people CC'd on an email. And now his digital reputation is adversely affected. And in fact, because he wanted to stay away from having anything online, it's been more of an issue than he could have ever imagined. So that's a classic case of someone being dragged in. And here Laura has listed a number of the different online repair issues. Imagine if there was a fraudster named Samir Somal and people were referred or learned about me and they saw somebody else who was part of a Ponzi scheme. Or there is a company that has a similar name, Dividend Capital Wealth and Dividend Capital Wealth Partners, and somebody's looking up one company, they're finding information about another, even when they're typing in your exact name. So all these issues relate to erroneous, negative, or just incorrect information about you and your business, and being proactive about making sure that you represent yourself appropriately couldn't be more than ever important to your opportunity set.
I remember you told me a story of an individual who had purchased a product and thought they found that product or service on Google, started to write really negative reviews and share all those reviews and post things in terrible ways around the internet, and then realized that they were writing reviews for the wrong service, the wrong company. So, that's just devastating to the person who's been wronged, but it can happen, so crazy things. So we've covered how to build, monitor, and repair reputation. I don't think we have any questions. We're always happy to view them here in the Q&A and answer them for you. Again, we can be found on social media platforms. If you Google our names, you'll eventually find us. As Samir mentioned, there is a cartoon character with my same name, so don't connect with her. But I'm here. Thank you so much. I think if there's no questions, we can adjourn.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much, Samir. That was wonderful information. Really do appreciate it. I'm sure you've never heard the Austin Powers comparison. That's a tough one to rank for.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you so much. It was a wonderful session.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Sean.